Thank you for
Okay.
having me.
Yeah,
We can hop
absolutely.
right in.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's get in here. It's great to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today. I appreciate
Of
it.
course. Yes, of course.
So, before we get into your good work, I want to know this first and foremost. One of the things that changed the way that we work and live was living through COVID. How did you get through that era, and how has it changed the way that you approach things today?
Wow, that's a great question. COVID was a really introspective reset for myself. I know that from my experience, I've had friends and family members where it could either be like a very good thing to have to go inward and take that time to connect with yourself, or it could be a really isolating experience, right? It was a time where I realized the importance of entering back into academia. I had been wanting to get my master's for a really long time. I love to learn, and I had gotten a really meaningful undergraduate degree in global sustainability, but my entire career has been in design, communications, and creative content of different types. And I knew that I wanted to get the academic credential to back that up so I could really move forward blending those two worlds. So I ended up getting into a master's program at Georgetown University, and it was a really meaningful experience. And it's sort of launched me on this really passionate trajectory of blending those worlds of visual design and environmental advocacy work.
So, let's get into the work that you're doing on a daily basis. I'm going to put you in front of 13-year-olds. You're at career day, and one of the kids in the back of the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
Sure, sure. Okay, I love it. So toss the jargon out, not a
Yeah.
communication strategist, not brand building. I love it. So I would say that I give people to the tools to share their story, to
Okay.
get clear on what their story is, and then share that with an audience that they think needs to hear it, right? And so in my work, I use written communication to do that. I use words to do that, but I also use visual design as well. How can we use graphics and video to paint the picture of meaningful work and get that in front of the right people?
Okay. So, what did you want to be when you were that age? When you were at career day, what was your dream gig?
That's so funny. I remember specifically when I was in third grade, we had to get reflective on what we wanted to be when we grew up. And I remember saying, I want to be the first female president of the United States, and I want to have 10 kids. I want to do it all. I want to do it both. I've always been a nurturer. I have a big family, and I've always really felt empowered to lead. I'm not in politics.
Right. Right. Right.
Very, very quickly realized that was not my path. But I think that those sentiments do still ring true in who I am and what I do on a day-to-day basis, definitely.
So I don't want to get in anything overtly political, but I was just talking about this earlier on. There have been two valid chances for a woman to be elected the president of the United States. And I would figure with the power of women that runs so many things in this world, it would have completely happened by now.
Yes, I agree. I really agree. It's a fascinating topic, and it's interesting. My husband is a huge history buff. I'm
Yeah.
fascinated by history. I don't retain all of the facts like some people do, but I love the story of it, right? How did
Yeah.
we get to where we are? And we were watching this three-part documentary on Netflix about the founding of our nation, right? I think it's called The American Experiment. And it was fascinating to me because it gave more personality to what
Mhm.
actually happened, right? Not just, oh, no taxation without representation. Like we've all heard it, right? We
Yeah.
we get it. We know the timeline, the this happened, then that happened. But no, like the beautiful idea that it was really unique and aspirational for us to write down on paper, we the people, right?
Yeah.
And the idea that people are created equal, even though very specifically slaves and women were not
Right.
actually so. So I think that's a really interesting, and I've been thinking about this all week because I think it comes back to the world we live in now and
Hmm.
the role of design, right? Because back then, what was shaping the worldview of people was the press, was
Yeah.
written news, right?
Yeah.
And for me, that's the whole point of design is to influence people for the better, right? And unfortunately, I feel like we've gotten to a place where instead of uplifting people through written communication and visual design, we're extracting and exploiting, right? We're really capitalizing on that manufactured desire. So I completely segued from what you were saying, but it's a fascinating question,
Yeah,
right? What does it mean to lift people up, and why hasn't a woman been lifted up and put on
yeah.
that pedestal yet? I'm shocked that we haven't got there.
It's a mystery to me for sure. So I'm curious, take me back to where you were born and raised, and how did this kind of hybrid of design, storytelling, strategy, coaching others to get to that place, how did all of these seeds get planted for you to find your place?
Sure, it's a great question. I would say that one of my greatest fortunes was the way I grew up. So I grew up in a rural county at the base of the Shenandoah National Park. Really beautiful. We're talking rolling hills, a really vibrant local food system, rivers and waterfall hikes, just a really, really beautiful place to grow up. And it's fascinating to me because it was also probably one of the most difficult times in my life because I grew up in a family of four children, single mother, raised on food stamps, shopping at the local food pantry, house falling apart a bit, really difficult, mom dealing with postpartum depression. And so it could have very easily been a time where I fell away from myself. But even at such a young age, I realized the beauty of what we did have. And I would say that it was three things. We had a really strong sense of community, we had a really strong sense of a connection to nature. And we also had a really, really strong sense of the importance of self expression. That was something uniquely embedded in that community out there. So, just tangible examples, the farmers, the network of farmers would actually donate their surplus of vegetables in the growing season. So even though I was raised on food pantry meals, I had access to local fruits and vegetables. That is so incredible, right?
Yeah,
Looking back, it almost feels utopian.
yeah,
Obviously, it wasn't. It's very real and with our own aches and pains. But
sure.
that to me is an example of community doing something really, really right. That's really you're serving human beings and you're lifting up
Yeah,
real people, real children, right? And just like this vibrant ecosystem of artists. I got involved in this local theater troupe that to me was just, oh, some things that my mom's hippie friends did, but this elaborate, just tapestry of what is it? Paper mache mask theater. They would
yeah,
make these larger than life masks. We would put them on. The themes would be about the environment, this and that. And so it was very real to me that nature and people were connected, right? They
yeah,
weren't separate. And so when I went into a university setting, which was a gift, I entered into UVA on a full financial aid scholarship. So again, there was a big sense of appreciation entering into college, right? Just being grateful that I could even be a part of that
yeah,
landscape. And I wanted to make the most of it, right? How could I actually study something that could help somebody else, right? And so I landed into this brand new interdisciplinary program about global sustainability, specifically environmental studies. And, it's something that people kind of looked at me. Sustainability wasn't a buzzword yet. So people
yeah.
looked at me and they're like, what are you
Uh-huh,
studying?
uh-huh.
What are you
Yeah,
going to do with that? And I didn't know. I just
yeah,
knew that it was more important for me to study something that I believed in than graduate with a degree that would get me a job.
sure.
And I don't know if that answers your
It
question, but
did.
that's a little bit of who I am, I
Yeah,
guess.
no, it totally does. So where did you grow up? Was it there in Virginia? Was it where you're?
Sure, it's really close to where I am now. So
Okay,
the county is called Rappahannock County.
okay,
Really beautiful. Sperryville is
okay,
a town that's gotten a little bit more visibility over the
okay,
past few years.
okay.
But yeah, really
Interesting.
beautiful town.
Yeah. So who's been your muse? Who's been that inspirational force that's allowed you to find yourself, to find your place?
Wow, I would say it's a complicated answer, but really it's my dad.
Okay.
And it's my dad, despite having a very a very real relationship with his own struggles. When I was young, I have only brothers. I have four brothers, three that grew up in the same household as myself. And so this gender gap thing was always really present in my mind. Like if I wasn't good at something, I would ask myself, is it because I'm a girl and they're boys? It's really so fascinating how that can encroach on children's minds. Where
Yeah.
does it come from, right? And he was always the one who would break me out of that. So I remember, gosh, I think I was only in kindergarten, and a family member looked at me and they said, "Oh, Tessa, you are the sweetest, the cutest, prettiest little girl. And Tyler, he's my older brother, you're so smart." And my dad was furious. He was furious. He's like, "How dare you say that to her? That has nothing to do with who she is. How dare you call her brother intelligent and look at her and call her pretty? You must not know her."
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, "Whoa, what is that? What kind of response is that?" And looking back, I realized how powerful that was, that I had a figure in my life that was telling me at a very early age that the way you look has nothing to do with you. That's not the point, right? And to really cultivate who you are. He always believed in hard work. He told me probably as young as preschool that I was such a hard worker that one day I was going to get a full ride to a university. And it was so important because your education is the one thing that nobody can take away from you, right? And it's interesting because I heard that so many times that by the time I was in high school and I realized how unlikely that would be,
Hmm.
it didn't matter anymore. That was the goal, right? And so when I actually achieved that goal, I realized, wow, what a powerful gift for my dad to give his children is just the idea that you can accomplish something really magnificent to the extent that you almost feel like it's just something people do, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I say this, because my dad really struggled. He was adopted. He had a complicated upbringing. He struggled with mental health. He struggled with addiction. A few years ago, unfortunately, we did lose him in his battle with addiction. And so, this idea that someone can be this driving force in your life and also deeply struggling in theirs has also
Yeah.
been something that I reflect on a ton in my work and my personal life. It's just, oh my gosh, the power of human connection.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about what you were saying about your brothers, and I saw an interview recently with Michael Jordan, this mythological figure that we've analyzed from every angle. And the most poignant thing that I saw was recently. And I grew up watching him. I've seen interviews, all of the things.
Hmm.
And someone asked him, and I don't know if it was when he was going to the Hall of Fame, it was a seminal pre-event thing. And they were like, "How did you get this competitive spirit?" And he said, "I was the youngest kid. I had two siblings that I had to compete against." And it's like, that's it. That was where it all started, right? The
Yes.
spark was this sibling rivalry. And then you have the greatest superstar of any sport ever. And it all began because he wanted to beat his sisters. And that was it,
Yeah,
right? Isn't that
it
weird?
it's weird and it's fascinating because to be completely honest, I think you're one of the first people that I actually point blank said I compared myself to my brothers, right? Because there is a level of embarrassment about it, right? Like you don't want to admit that maybe your entire work ethic is founded on this ridiculous idea or even the
Yep.
idea that Michael Jordan had to compete with his siblings. It's ridiculous, right? And yet it's so real in our
Yeah.
culture is
Yeah.
this competition within the family instead of lifting each other up within the family. And to me it's really fascinating because I have a very vibrant family where everybody's very different from each other. And even I felt the competition within that setting, whereas they're my biggest advocates, right?
Yeah.
So where does that come from, right?
Uh-huh.
Is it outside of us? I think that's where culture comes into play, right? And
Yeah.
and that idea of needing to be better in other people's eyes rather than connected to your own sense of self and the fact that you're moving in the direction you're meant to be headed, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask you this. If you can meet one person alive on the planet right now that you find absolutely fascinating, that might help you on your journey and the work that you're doing, who would you love to sit down and have a lunch with and talk to?
Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh. I don't even know how to answer that question. I'm like, where do you even begin?
It could be a round table too.
Sure. I have to say, someone that I've really loved listening to is Brene Brown. And that's so funny because it's not like she's this totally inaccessible human being, right?
Yeah,
But I'm just so fascinated by people who are so passionate about what they have studied and are
yeah,
able to articulate that through real storytelling, right? And something that I love about Brene Brown is that she's trained as a researcher and yet one of the most compelling storytellers I've ever heard. I mean,
yeah,
I'm so inspired by her work.
yeah,
So she's definitely on the list.
yeah,
I'd
yeah,
say, you know, goodness. Yeah, I think of my thing is, I think it's funny because in America we have this big celebrity culture,
yeah.
but when it comes to who I'd really like to meet,
Uh,
I want to meet a thinker, right?
yeah, right, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, we get wrapped up in all of that celebrity, but sometimes it's just people that are fascinating. I mean, it could be a Harvard-trained brain that's doing inventive things. I mean, it can be just it could run the gamut. There's so many interesting people out there.
Yes, 100%. I think someone who is else on the list, what is his name? He's the founder of Big Architecture. I saw him on this. Oh, Bjark Ingels. I don't know if
Okay.
I'll pronounce his name correctly,
Yeah,
but he's another fascinating person because he sort of faked his way into becoming this world-known architect. I don't know if you know anything about him, but he is really celebrated, especially in the sustainable architecture space, which is something I'm completely fascinated by, the
yeah,
idea of regenerative design on a massive scale,
sure,
right?
sure.
And and maybe regenerative design isn't the exact right word. Biophilic definitely is, but he's so when I was watching a documentary on him after I had read a lot about his work in my master's program, he was talking about how nobody would hire him, so he just took on his own projects, right?
Yeah,
Kind of like punching above his what is the saying? Above his
his
belt,
weight.
something like
Yeah,
that. Yeah,
above
yeah.
his weight. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And to me, it's fascinating because I'm like, where do you get the audacity in a
yeah,
good way, right? And it's something I feel like I work for credibility to get in those spaces. And I really respect people who are able to do it in a different way, right? Who are able to say, no, I know for a fact that this is something that I'm meant to do and that I'm going to do it really well, even if it's a completely it's just like there's not a linear path towards me reaching that goal
yeah,
because of X, Y, and Z, right? So he's also someone I would love to have a
yeah.
conversation with.
So, from what I understand, Steven Spielberg did that on the Universal Studios lot. He literally got a table and he got a desk and he put his name on it and he kind of got invited to meetings. And then he kind of like, I think they were finally like, what are you doing? And then he like became like the key grip assistant and then he just worked his way up and that was it, but he wanted it so bad. And I mean, back in the day you could sneak into places, you act like you
Right.
belong, you can do it. Not anymore. I mean, we have too many biometrics and cameras. But then
Yeah,
he just, in the early 70s he was just like, I'm going for it. So
right.
those are fascinating figures when they feel impelled to do it so much. And it happens a lot with musicians and whatnot where they just kind of barnstorm and find their way in and it's like they do it.
Yes.
So
I love
yeah,
it. Yeah,
yeah,
putting yourself in the place where you want to be,
yeah,
right? There's something so powerful to
yeah.
that.
That conviction for sure. Speaking of conviction, what is the energy for you every day? Because you're affecting people's lives. You have a job, but you're also changing lives. You have a soul. What is that energy every day for you to do this at a high level?
Wow. Well, that's a very generous thing to say. Thank you. I would say it's fascinating to me because I feel like in this country, we give ourselves permission to compartmentalize our lives, right? This is how I am with my family. This is how I am at work. This is what I believe in my personal life, and I don't necessarily have to believe that at work. And for me, for better or for worse, it has just never worked like that for me. So pretty much I am who I am in the majority of the context of my life.
Yeah,
It has come to my advantage and my disadvantage for sure. But I say this because my creative work, in order to do my creative work, I really have to invest in my own mental well-being, my peace,
yeah,
my health, my happiness. I am really fortunate that I get to work from my own home office. I'm actually looking at a view of the Blue Ridge Mountains I grew up in. It's unbelievable. That gives me already just a huge sense of grounding. But I would say that I get a lot of happiness and fulfillment in my current role of being a mother. I recently became a mom. I have a
yeah,
2-year-old son. It's been such a beautiful experience. And so I love the fact that working from home enables me to have this really full morning with him,
yeah.
right? I get to spend time with my son, and it's not just love you, bye, get in the car
Uh-huh.
with dad.
Uh-huh.
My husband drops him off because it's on the way to work. But I feel like I go from having this really fulfilling family experience into my own personal ritual, which is quiet and solitary and, grounded in a pretty deep sense of peace. And then I go into my work, which is behind a computer, but I don't feel disconnected from people. I
Yeah.
get, my coworkers actually, I currently work at Georgetown University, and they're often laughing because they're like, considering we only see you 3 times a year, it doesn't feel like that, right?
Right.
And so I think that's technology used in its best form, right? We're seeing how technology is used in its worst form, but in its best form, you get to live this very full life where your job is fulfilling, but it's also not at the detriment of your life. And that's really my goal, is not only to build that for myself, but to help other people get to that place because I think we're all being sold a pretty cruddy dream, which is that you need to succeed at the expense of your actual purpose,
Right.
right? Or,
Right.
or what fills you up. So I don't buy into it.
Yeah, right. No, I get it. I get it. So let me ask you this. Let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into that 18-year-old version of you. You walk into the room, there's a film projector, you click play, and a 60-second highlight reel of the life you've lived comes up there. Is that young version of you going to believe your life turned out this way?
Wow, I love that you asked that. I was just reflecting on this with a family member of mine. I think, as much as I think it's fascinating because the more you succeed or accomplish goals that you've set for yourself, the more you move the bar,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And it's really easy to not take time to celebrate those wins. And I was thinking about this exact question the other day and thinking, wow, there are so many things that I've accomplished that my younger self would have been overjoyed by, blown away by. I mean, being able to give a TED talk, being able to go to the White House and actually attend this forum on community scale climate solutions as the only Georgetown representative aside from the VP of sustainability at the time. I mean, these huge accomplishments where you do them and it's almost surreal. And then you think, well, next, right? What's
Yeah.
next?
Yep.
Got to keep going,
Uh-huh.
which I think there's something beautiful to that, but also just taking time to not become desensitized to the life that you've grown into. I
Sure.
feel like, aside from professional ambition on a very authentic and personal level, I would have been overjoyed to know that I lived in a house with air conditioning. I
Yeah.
mean, like, that's ridiculous, but my husband builds homes for a living and he
Yeah.
built our home on a slice of his family farm, which has been a gift. And while he built it, we were living in this double wide trailer on the property so he could be close, right? And it didn't have air heating or air conditioning, and I was pregnant, and it
Wow.
reminded me of my childhood. I was like, oh, not these
Oh no.
humid Virginia summers all over again where you're
Yeah.
feeling, you're like you're camping basically. And I
Uh-huh.
was like, oh no, there's so much. That time was so, it grounded me so much of what it felt like to be a child, which is, connected to nature, but also uncomfortable.
Yep. Yep.
And I remember we moved into this beautiful house that my husband took so much care to build. And I was standing in the doorway looking out at our yard, and I realized that the temperature was going to stay more or less the same. This is so humiliating, but I literally cried. I burst into tears. I was like, I can't believe that something as silly, something that we take for granted, especially in this country, I just, I have that. I get to
Yep.
have that. That's everything, right? And so I think that as I don't even know if I'm really explaining it right, but a younger me would see that and think, oh, that's making it, right? You live this beautiful life. You have a family. You get to spend time in your yard with your dogs. I mean, what's better than that, right?
Yep.
If you put ambition completely out of the equation, I feel like that what have I always dreamed of? And that's really it. And
Yeah.
so I try not to become numb
Yeah.
to, we get used to
Sure.
where we are, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a delicate dance between what you want next and appreciating what you got in front of you, and it's human. It's the quagmire of being a human being on this planet. It's always that push and pull. It's interesting you brought up a notion that's my always my final question, and I don't think anybody's ever done this before. Like you saw it coming. So everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you drive the bus of what we see. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Oh, wow. Wow. Great question. I would say at my core, I really see myself as a connector, as someone who connects, who brings people together. I have always had this interest and fascination with, oh, this person told me something 2 weeks ago, and I just realized what they need is actually the exact thing that my friend has been talking about over here. There's something that gives me so much joy when you can bring people together who authentically need each other, right? Or and maybe don't need is a big word, but who the tapestry of their life is certainly more vibrant for it, right? And that's something that I realize I do in my professional work, but I'm always doing it in my personal work. People come to me when they're looking for recommendations or X, Y, and Z, if they're trying to meet someone in my hometown, if they're trying to spend a day trip in my hometown. And I love it. I'll create people entire itineraries like, oh, you need to meet this person.
Yeah.
And if you need to heal your gut, you need to meet this herbalist. And then, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, I just love it. And I think that that's the point of life for me is to just bring people together so they
Yep.
have a better life on their own. I don't know why. I really don't know why I am that way. But for me, I think that that's who I am.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like the community you grew up in. It sounds like a lot of those aspects, whether conscious or subconsciously, got sewn as a part of your DNA. But
Mhm.
that's the way we should be. I mean, I've always thought the world would be such a better place if we would just trade goods or like services for services. So you're good at design, but this person down here can cut your shrubs and grass and take care of your landscaping or trim trees in your yard. Great, let's do it. Or I'm this guy's good at plumbing and I'm good at like, I don't know, teaching you how to ride a bike right. I don't know. If we started
Yeah.
doing that in our own neighborhood and around and we didn't have to worry about exchanging money, we could beautify and get things taken care of. It would be wonderful, you know?
100%. I love that so much. And something that happened a lot in the community that I grew up in, right? You have people who really were community herbalists, landscapers, this and that. So much trading homemade sourdough
Yep.
for a tincture for their allergies or
Yep.
something amazing like that. And I'm seeing a resurgence of that in my generation.
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends who've been called to really incredible, meaningful work. More than a handful of my friends have become midwives and doulas, and I see them talking all the time about they've actually worked this bartering system into their payment schedule. Like, this is my rate. if you can't afford it, these are the type of things that I accept. Incredible. I
Yeah,
think that that is, in an age where it's interesting because I see a lot of talk about, okay, if and we'll go back to politics for a second. If people are unhappy with the world that we're living in, do we keep physically protesting? Is anybody listening in this
right.
age where everyone's glued to their phone, right? So, what is the physical protest in this day and age? And I really think it is the way you use your money, right?
Yeah,
If you move more towards a bartering system, incredible. If you move more, if you're willing to maybe take a pay cut to work for an ethically aligned organization, that's really, of course, it's a really complicated conversation to ever talk about people's finances that way. But what are we willing to give up in exchange for a more aligned life,
sure.
right?
Yeah,
And is that protest?
right.
It's so
It
fascinating.
is fascinating. Someone told me years ago to carry extra stamps just in case you don't have the money, because you can exchange goods and people can always use stamps. So there's always ways of bartering and getting around it. So TessaCruises.com, you own your names.com. Is that the
Yes,
best place to go for everything, questions, consultation, hiring you? Is that where they should
sure.
go? Okay.
Yep, that
Okay.
works.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Perfect. I will put that in the show notes. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much for opening up. Thank you for your story, the light you're putting out in the world. This has been absolutely wonderful.
Thank you, Joe. I really appreciate your time.
You bet. And I